I know it is not our normal time, but we do have a special session tonight at 5, so I'd like to call us to order. In accordance with South Carolina Code of Laws, 1985, Section 30-4-80-E, the following have been notified of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting, the Herald, the Charlotte Observer, CN2, and WRHI. If I could ask you all to please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. We'll now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, you have all received a copy of the agenda. The first item on the agenda is to move into executive session, but for anybody that is watching, we will be back in this room to begin our open session promptly at 6 o'clock, and if we have additional executive session business, we'll do that at the end. So with that,
Motion to go into executive session.
Second.
we are in executive session, back at 6 o'clock.
Terrifying.
All right, it is 6 o'clock. We have been in executive session since 5. I will say that we did do the statement of notice, the moment of silence, and the pledge beforehand for anyone who was not here joining us. But at
Motion
this
to
portion, I'd
return.
like to return to open session.
Motion to return to public session.
All right, we are back in open session. I do not believe we have any actions resulting from our discussion, so we're going to move straight into the next portion of the agenda, which is approval of some minutes. We had a June 1st special called board meeting. You've all received a copy. Were there adjustments or corrections?
No.
All right, and then we also had our June 2nd budget meeting. Any adjustments or corrections? All right, those will stand with unanimous consent then. And that brings us to public participation. I believe I have 3 cards, so when I call you up, if you want to come to the podium, state your name and address, and then you're allowed to address the board. The first one is Brandon Dunford.
Hi, Brandon Dunford, 157 Rose Tree Lane, Fort Mill.
Is his mic working? Okay, you're good.
Do I need to talk louder?
Nope,
Okay,
you're
there
good.
we go, perfect. All right, because I can. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Brandon Dunford. I'm a Fort Mill parent districted for the Flint Hill Schools. First off, I want to thank you. Thank you for the March 10th resolution and the July 24th letter calling on the government to enforce the zoning code at the Silfab site. But I do have to say this plainly and with respect. Words do not protect our children. Resolutions do not neutralize hydrofluoric acid, and letters do not stop silane from combusting just 1,300 feet from our classrooms. 2 weeks ago, everything changed. On July 20th, Judge William McKinnon affirmed the Board of Zoning Appeals in all respects and denied Silfab's appeal. Read that order. It is not a close call. The court called the zoning ruling unambiguous. Any use not listed in the county's use table is prohibited, and Silfab's lawyers conceded in their brief that solar panel manufacturing is not listed. Silfab threw every argument it had, jurisdiction, standing. They even claimed that the county tax deal ratified their project, and the court rejected every single one. So what did Silfab do with the ruling? It filed a motion to reconsider, and the county council said it will wait until that motion is heard on August 26th before deciding what action, if any, to take. Meanwhile, Silfab claims the order has no impact on its operations and calls their manufacturing process assembly production activities. Let's be honest with each other. Chemically transforming raw materials into solar cells is not it's not assembly. Manufacturing, assembly, and production are not interchangeable words. Thousands of pounds of hazardous chemicals and flammable gases remain on the property tonight. Council members said just last week that they expect no manufacturing to occur before the hearing. Word games are not compliance, and the new school year has already begun. That is why this board matters. Inside that order is a page written almost directly to you. The court held that one neighbor, Walter Buchanan, had standing because owners of property adjacent to or in near vicinity of the development hold substantial interest in what happens next door. Board members, that school is your property. You are responsible for these schools, and more than 1,600 students sit closest of all. If one retired neighbor has standing, this school district has standing, stronger standing than anyone else. One neighbor took on Silfab's law firms and won, and while families have sacrificed time and money, the community has developed an amazing grassroots movement to pay the ongoing legal fees to continue this fight. The school board has only issued words on a sheet of paper. We need you to use your standing to protect our children. So here is our ask. Step up, direct your counsel to get this district into the legal fight and demand enforcement of the ruling the court has already affirmed. Show up on August 26th. Be in the room with the parents that will certainly pack it, and say out loud what your resolution says on paper. You led with words, now lead with action. Words don't protect our children, but courage does. Thank you.
Lisa Gunter?
Good evening. My name is Lisa Gunter. I live at 1020 Dorsey Drive in Fort Mill.
So thank you for allowing me the time to speak tonight. I am the mother of 2 boys who attended Flint Hill Elementary School, one entering kindergarten this year and the other in 3rd grade. And I stand before you tonight carrying a load of defeat, anxiety, and a heaviness that's difficult to put into words. And I know I'm not alone in these feelings as we sent our kids back to school this week. And I'm sending mine back with fear and uncertainty instead of excitement that should accompany a new school year. When the district offered a lottery option, I felt hope for the first time in months. I thought, finally, there may be a way for my family to find relief from the situation Solfab Solar has created in our community. But that hope was quickly disappeared when only one of my children was offered into a different school. Instead of spending the summer making wonderful memories with my family, I spent it navigating impossible decisions. I grieved the thought of separating my boys, of taking away the opportunity for my oldest to show his little brother the ropes, to ride the bus together, and to share an excitement of tending the school that they were going to go to together. And no parent should have to choose between keeping their children together or seeking what they believe to be as a safer school environment. And I know many families have encountered obstacle after obstacle while advocating for what we believe is the best interest of our kids. And we've been repeatedly told no when asking for accommodations that would allow our children to remain together while attending a school farther away from Solfab. And the emotional, mental, and physical toll this has taken is profound. And I appreciate the efforts that have been made. However, lotteries, letters, reassuring words don't change the reality that this toxic, unethical, and improperly zoned company operates next to children's school. Air monitoring didn't prevent or warn families about the spills that occurred last year. And as a Christian, I believe we're called to protect the most vulnerable and to act with wisdom when danger is present. And tonight, I ask you to match your words with action. Fight harder, speak louder, continue advocating at every level available to you until every child can attend school without parents questioning whether their health and safety is being compromised. Please don't let this become the new normal. Our children deserve better, and they are worth fighting for. Thank you.
I think it's Paul Degadide. I don't know, I'm probably butchering that.
Close enough. Paul, nice to meet you guys. I'm a student at River Trail Elementary School. Wanted to bring something to your attention with a recent hire and to talk a little bit about some of the professionalism, which I think we all understand as educators should be paramount to functioning in our roles. We have a student who's enrolled in a new hires class. After we were notified of her assignment, we began to research this teacher to see who she would be studying under. It brought up a few concerns that we raised with the principal twice over the last few weeks, requesting very limited intervention of just transferring the student from one class to another. Those requests were denied, and after my wife got me involved and I began to do a little bit more research into this person, I have very serious concerns, not just about their professionalism in general, but their employment overall at River Trail. I have a series of photos. I don't know if you guys are allowed to hand these to
You're
me.
welcome to bring them
Can I call you bailiff?
up. We're not that formal, you can bring them up.
The National Educator Association guidelines on free speech and social media state that you should not use school accounts or logos, do not include your educator role, and do not employ inflammatory rhetoric. In the first packet that I handed up, this teacher has a public Facebook page and is easily found searching his name. However, it can also be easily found searching River Trail Elementary, as he is active on social media. It is not difficult. He's within the first few posts that show up. The public status of his Facebook page means that anyone, including River Trail Elementary students, can find his posts. He routinely posts photos on his personal account inside of a classroom on school property, in front of school signage, including photos of school children discussing their assignments. You can see the students' names on their assignments and can identify who these children are based on these posts on his personal page, likely without the consent of parents. The third page, there's a little girl on the bottom left. I know her name is Sloan because,
I'm going to ask you not to use names and descriptors if you don't mind.
fine, don't know last name, but I'm just going to say that you can identify who this person's name is, and this is a public Facebook post from this teacher. He lists his role as an educator at River Trail, the grade he's teaching, and as well as previous posts at other schools, including the age and photos of students on his page. I also have there's a Google Drive folder. These are some limited representations, but there are numerous other photos. So he clearly identifies as an educator and includes tagging the facility where he works. For inflammatory rhetoric, making sure there aren't any children in the room. This same page contains significant inflammatory rhetoric. As you can see, I highlighted certain aspects of it, calling law enforcement officers Nazis and Gestapo, supporting, and I apologize again, but this is a direct quote and on a published page that students can access, that he supports standing up to this fucking bullshit. We are not the enemy, our government is. WTF is happening. ICE is the enemy of this state, and we need unity against this terrorism. In addition, he reposts content regarding the Orlando nightclub shootings where someone posted, "All fags should be killed or at least relocated." Again, this is a public page that any student can find simply by looking up River Trail Elementary School on their Facebook account.
You've only got just a few seconds left, so I just want to make sure you knew.
Sure. This third set goes over personal boundaries where he posts photos of himself in states of undress, with his shirt off, drinking. He frequently talks about his struggles with sobriety and mental breakdowns, where he has identified being an educator, being in the classroom as the main cause in several of these posts about these mental breakdowns.
Thank you for sharing this information. We will make sure that it gets to the right folks to review it and take under advisement.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I think if my page flipping is right, our next agenda item is staff reports, starting with financials. Ms. Lordo?
Thank you and good evening. Welcome back from the summer. Tonight, I've got a couple things to share briefly. What I included in your packet were our monthly and year-to-date financials for June. This one's a little different because it is our fiscal year end, and I will share that these are draft numbers. We're currently starting our audit process of reviewing all of our funds, working with our external auditors and making any final adjustments depending on all of our other special revenue funds for state and federal accounting. But I do want to share, I went to my friend now in technology, Jonathan Bradstreet, who's helped me with these monthly financials. And I said, Jonathan, I think we need a little different look for this year. Let's do a little bit different cover sheet. So he and I came up with what you see, and we are certainly open for any suggestions. But I wanted to kind of summarize for you and for the public when we post these, just some real key points as we go through the year. This one's a little different because it is the fiscal year end, but normally on a monthly, like under the lines to watch, I may have different aspects of where we are in the fiscal year. It might depend on what's going on with the state budget, might depend on what's going on with budget to actual numbers. So I'm open for any suggestions you may have or any specific numbers you would like to see. I just put on here some things that I thought were important for this being the June fiscal year end. But I'm going to start at the top like I always do with basically saying where we are in the fiscal year, and we're 100% on this one, 12 of 12 months. General fund revenues, and these are draft numbers, but $266,692,202. And you can see the comparable number for the fiscal year 24-25, and then, or 25-26. And then for general fund expenditures, $263,439,802. If you do the math on that, you'll see that that is positive, about $3.2 million. We've not moved the $2 million out of the contingency for opening new schools fund, so that will add to the revenues. So we will be at about 5.2 million in total revenues in excess of expenditures. Of that number, we need to put 4.5 million into fund balance to continue to meet our threshold that we like to use of 18 to 19% of next year's budgeted expenditures. So that leaves us about 750,000 available. And that's important because the next item I'm going to talk about is an additional year-end transfer and what we would recommend. But that's where these numbers come from in looking at kind of where we are for audit purposes. We always talk about, and I thought that you would be interested under the lines to watch, looking at how we tracked with taxes, local tax collections this year versus last year, state aid this year versus last year. And I think as we've repeated during the budget process, you can see that our state aid, our basic state funding is not increasing proportionately at the same amount that we are forced to, and you are forced to with tax millage, with local property taxes coming in. And then we always talk about interest on investments. One of the questions that I'm sure you get, I continue to get, is how much do we spend on instruction versus support? So I thought those were good numbers to highlight. You can see for this fiscal year, we spent $159 million on instruction and $104 million on support. But like I say, these will change as we go through the year, and if you have any other ideas for anything you'd like to see just highlighted, you can certainly let me know. Okay? Any other questions about with June? We didn't have any significant delinquent real estate collections, and vehicle tax collections are still tracking a little over $2 million a month. And you can see, you've got on the next two pages our monthly analysis. And as we would expect, you can see we're going to end the year with our local revenue being higher than our state revenue, as we talked about during the budget process. So any questions on where we think we are for June year-to-date fiscal year? Okay. I've got a couple other things I just want to share. As far as the state budget, the South Carolina, the Legislative Conference Committee has agreed on a budget. They are slated to bring the full House and Senate back, I believe, next Tuesday, August the 11th. And so both bodies, the House and the Senate, will vote on the conference committee recommendations, and then it will go to the governor's office for possible vetoes. We do not believe there will be any significant changes in the education funding, but we did receive July allocations, but they're based on the prior year. A lot of people ask us that, do you not receive any money in July? We do receive our 1/12 of state aid, but it is based on last year's allocations, and it will not get updated until the final state budget has passed. But we did go ahead and teachers have received their first check because we're now on a July through June pay cycle, and we did base it on the new teacher salary schedule. We also got that question a lot.
And
So we've moved
assuming-
forward.
Assuming that they do finally approve the budget, we will recoup the
Correct.
dollars that
We
we
will
would
be
have received
caught
in
up.
July.
Correct. We will be caught up. The state will catch us up
Okay.
with the new state budget. A few other things. As you remember, last year, there was a new law that all of our parent support organizations, our PTO, PTAs, and booster clubs have to register with the district office each year by August the 1st. So we started our process a little earlier this summer, working with our schools. We've had 37 parent support group organizations register so far. All of our organizations from last year have re-registered, so I think that's very positive. There's a few that are still searching for a few positions, like one may be waiting on to fill a treasurer position or a president position, but they have all registered with us. The background checks are 91% complete as of today. I believe there's just 7 background checks that are pending to make us fully in compliance with the new law. So I thought that was very positive news to share with you. We have completed our procurement audit for last fiscal year. That comes this summer in advance of our financial audit. Green Finney Cawley does that for us as well. The results were very favorable. You know, they always have to come up with a few things, and what they're checking is really things that the state procurement office has asked them to check. There's a few things that they say every year because the State Department asked them to check, but we feel strongly and we just write a response. And I'd just like to give an example. One of them is that we have some procurement cards that are only in the school name, just 1 or 2 per school. And the reason that we do that is that if a teacher needs to check out a card, we do not want them to check out a card that has the principal's name or the assistant principal's name. So we think that's important. So we will just respond and explain our reasoning on that. We do not block MCC codes. You know, when you have a credit card, you can block certain industry codes. It's amazing where things are purchased in a school district. And because we have so many eyes that watch the card transactions every day, every week, every month, we feel like we have controls over that that suffice for not having to actually go in and have certain codes on our cards. So we've elected not to do that. We review our card usage every 6 months, but if there hasn't been any activity, we do not make that card inactive. And that was one of the things that the state procurement office asked the auditors to check. But we have certain cards that are only for emergencies. And so we think we have reason to have those cards. And so that was one of the comments or recommendations, and we'll respond to that. And the final comment that we are going to enact was that we do not have consistent documentation for the issuance of cards. Sometimes it's a phone call to the procurement office to say, we have a new employee that needs a card, we have a new principal. Sometimes it's an email, but we're going to actually develop a form with all the signatures, and that protects the procurement office that they issued a card to an employee. So that was a great recommendation, I thought, from the auditors, and we're in the process of getting that developed, and we'll get that in place. But overall, they were extremely pleased with all of our accountability. As you know, we have a lot of transactions. We have a lot of construction pay apps, and that requires even a higher level of transparency and accountability of all the processing of those dollars. So they were very pleased, and they'll issue a formal report, and we will share that with you as well as soon as that is all completed with them. We've had the exit conference, and we're just waiting on the final report. Any questions about procurement audit? Okay. And I want to share just a few things with student nutrition. As they started the year, I asked Tammy just to give me a couple of interesting facts. Yesterday, we served 8,836 meals, very consistent with last year. We were 77 meals less, and Tammy didn't like that, but I think that's pretty consistent with last year. We only are short, we have 9 positions to fill across our district in the cafeterias. We are in the period with free and reduced families where they roll over from last year and they have to reapply to see if they still qualify. So right now, we're at about 23% free and reduced level. Normally, we're about 21%. So we think some of this group may no longer qualify because of some changes in the federal regulations on the dollar thresholds for qualification. But we're pretty consistent from year to year with that. We did change food distributors this year. We are back with US Foods. We're very pleased with that. They're local. Delivery is going very well. So we're happy to be back and support one of our local businesses for our food deliveries. It's a very large contract. Tammy said that the certified South Carolina grown applications are due in November, and we will apply. This is for South Carolina grown products that we want to support. Last year, we received $25,000 under this program, and our students enjoyed South Carolina grown strawberries. So she's planning to do that again this year. And then the last thing is we now call our employee meal program, where we offer lunch once a week for all district employees. We call that Thankful Thursdays. And so we're going to start Thankful Thursdays for the schools this week, and the district office will have to wait until August 27th for our Thankful Thursday meals to start. But it's a great program. It just shows how wonderful our student nutrition department is, and it's been a great benefit, and we've gotten great feedback from that, from our staff.
Leanne, there were questions about free breakfast that was being.
Free breakfast, yes. Thank you for reminding me about that. So free breakfast statewide, there are a handful of districts like ours that are not under the federal CEP program, which is the Community Eligibility Program. You have to have a certain level of free and reduced students to qualify for that, and we do not. But in the state budget process, there was a proviso that is attached to the state budget that would offer free breakfast for all students in South Carolina. The cost of that is $8.7 million. From what I understand, the conference committee kept that in the budget plan, but they reduced the amount to $2.7 million. So we are trying to find out from the state student nutrition office how they will handle that. And we think it may be something like we can get funded enough to offer 1 day a week free breakfast. So we're waiting to see what happens with that next week. But we worked really hard and got the word out to a lot of our friends in other districts to ask their legislators to please support that for districts like ours. And so I think it'll stay. It's really just a matter of, does that 2.7 million stay there, or did they go ahead and fund it at the full 8.7 million, which would provide it every day of the week? So we're still hopeful, but we'll still see.
I got a couple questions here.
Sure.
So we need 9 positions, which I feel like is pretty good to fill our cafeteria
It's
staff.
excellent, yes.
Are any of these, like, do we have, are all of these at different schools, or is one school getting hit a little bit harder?
I would say they're all different schools
Okay.
across the district. I can find out if there's any significant.
Just want to make sure one of them wasn't losing like 3 or 4 people, right?
And if they do, our leadership group, they do a great job of moving people around if they need to
Got it.
between the schools.
So we're back with US Foods.
We're back with US Foods.
Can you remind me why we left?
Well, it's a contract over like you do issue a 5-year contract.
Okay.
And we, under procurement regulations, we have to put it out for bid. And so last time when that was bid, we were not able to award them the contract because they were not the low bidder. And it was a very, very small difference.
Okay.
So it was time we rebid. We actually tacked on to a different agreement in the state, and we were able to go ahead. I think it was 1 year early, and we moved. But we're very excited to be back with them.
Cool, good.
Just the proximity of them being local also and working with us. And they're a great vendor. And then impact fees, I didn't mention, but just to give you a quick update, we've collected to date $84.7 million. We've earned interest on that escrow account that's held by York County of $7 million. and we have drawn all funds down from the county but $1,000. We have to have $1,000 in the account. So we are up to date with claiming the funds for Flint Hill Elementary and Flint Hill Middle. But we've collected on single-family units 3,011 and multifamily 2,261. So we're at total units 5,272. June and July, we had a combined, since I hadn't reported in July, June and July combined, we had 9 homes and 14 multifamily. And together, June and July, we collected about $557,000 in impact fees, and we've drawn them down. So we're keeping up with that.
What happens now that Flint Hill Middle is largely?
So we will still, for the next month or so, be paying some final pay apps for Flint Hill Middle. I just looked at that with our bond financial advisor because we were looking at our next plan. And we still have about $4 million in committed contracts, final pay apps for all the vendors involved with Flint Hill Middle. So we will still be paying down on that before we move into possibly another phase of our comprehensive impact fee study. Okay, thank you.
In my mind, there was something
Next, right?
else.
I'm moving on to
Yeah,
my,
so you're-
okay.
You're back.
So as I mentioned, we have an opportunity, and I'd like to ask for your consideration in moving, doing a second additional year-end transfer based on where I think we'll stand with total revenues and expenditures. We just don't have to drop that into fund balance in excess when we have some other needs. So I'm asking you to consider 4 items for a second transfer, and the total transfer would be just slightly less than the $700,000. It would be $695,500. The first item on here, we found out in June, after you passed our local budget, that we would not qualify for the rural teacher recruitment and retention funding that we've received the past couple years. That is based on a formula of your actual teacher turnover. And it was a great benefit to have. It's a good thing not to be in the place where we're not getting it any longer, but we were able to do some really great things with that funding. So Ms. Romanek and Mr. Ollinger sat down and kind of went through our total amount that we got last year from that funding was $371,000. So they prioritized what they thought we still would really like to do this year. One of the things is just the recruitment efforts, and I think we're going to ask Darlene to come and put her on the agenda for the next meeting and let her give you some details about all the work that she has done for teacher recruitment. It's quite amazing. And I could not do it justice to explain to you everything that happens behind the scenes with this, but I think you would be very interested. But of this $258,000, $112 would go toward those recruitment efforts. The second piece of that is critical needs teacher stipends. We were able to pay teacher stipends to our RISE, our special ed RISE, STAR program, CERDEP, and Oak Grove Academy teachers. Excuse me. And so we'd really like to continue to pay those stipends. That'd be $121,000. Then we have a small amount of $5,000 for alternative certification fees, and then a new intern program that she would like to start this year would be $20,000. And so we whittled down, we did a lot of other things with it that she can talk about and share with you, but these are our highest priority items for next year. The next item is $240,000 for our Citadel outdoor air quality monitoring. This would cover our quarterly reviews of the equipment that's already been installed, but this does pick up Flint Hill Middle as well. Mr. Burke and I are working with them, going through the details of that contract and what we think we need for this year, but I've estimated $60,000 a quarter for that contract. The next item is our strategic planning initiatives. We have not put any additional funds into that since 2019, and this covers many of our district-wide programs such as Teacher of the Year, Support Staff of the Year, enrollment projection work that Dr. Holden and Catawba Regional Planning Council do for us, our district events like what we just did last spring that was a huge success at the Greenway, our event, our Cognia work. This fund curriculum does a lot of work through these funds as well with Cognia. We use it for our Old English Consortium. That's the old name. I can't think of the new name. But the OEC, y'all know what I'm talking about? Upper Palmetto. The OEC professional development piece that they do through that program for a lot of our administrators and our teachers, and then our service years recognition. So it's sort of a fund that it's sort of a catch-all for a lot of district things that don't fit into somebody else's department budget that cover the whole district. And in looking at that, all of these areas have had increased cost just because of the growth of our district, the growth of our staff. We now go to Dr. Holden multiple times a year and ask him to update enrollment projections. In looking at kind of where we ended in June, I'm concerned because all these things together are just at a higher cost for us now. But if you have any questions about that or want any more details, I'm glad to share details of these accounts. Ms. Jackley and I have gone through them in a lot of detail and compare between the years. And then the last item is for our high school athletics, specifically related to bus transportation. We are fine covering, I looked at as you recall, we increased the athletic fee to $150 for last school year. We collected within 15 to 18,000 of what we projected we would collect, all three high schools combined. So we were break even on the collections. We are certainly we're covering all the coaching stipends, but the bus transportation costs have just continued to increase. And one of the main reasons that we're really working on this school year is these drivers, for the most part, when they drive trips, are in overtime because they have driven their regular routes that day or that week, and then they're driving that weekend. And so when you look at the driver cost with their salary and benefits and their overtime, it just continues to get higher. And it really hits us late spring. That's when we have so many athletic trips with playoffs and things like that. But we are working, Dr. Dixon and I are working very closely with transportation. We've had a lot of meetings, discussions this summer. And one of the things that they are doing is they are taking a handful of their available driver already approved positions, and they are going to be activity trip drivers only. We used to do that, and then we had to move away from it because of bus driver shortage. But with where transportation is now with their applicant pool, it's been very positive this summer. So they are going to designate certain drivers that they know want to do that. Drivers who may want more flexibility with their time, and they may not want to drive a morning route at 5:30 a.m. So they're going to have certain drivers this year that are going to be activity trip drivers only, so that when they drive these athletic events, they would not be in overtime. It would just be part of their normal contract. Do you see what I mean? And we're really going to watch that closely as we start this school year and see how we can improve on our costs to run all these buses for these athletic events and band trips.
Isn't this the year that we also moved into a different region or district or something, and it's a lot
We
farther
have,
away?
yes,
Yeah.
we have. So we think there will be more mileage related to that and more hours. But we are doing everything we can with, as I say, trying to manage that better, monitoring it, working with transportation. But unfortunately, it's just the situation you're in with these trips being at night and the weekends.
So
Further away.
I just want to make sure I understand what we're asking for, right?
Okay,
I'm-
sure.
I'm, maybe it's a slow night for me, maybe I'm.
Nope, go ahead.
So there used to be a way where what you're requesting was funded, right? So the
Well,
question,
We have, I think I can answer your question.
Okay.
I think I know where you're going. We have a certain amount budgeted in the general fund for, for transportation activity trips.
okay,
And like, if you remember in the budget process, you approved, we're putting another 50,000 in there for gas, repairs on the buses, things like that. So in looking at that number, it cannot absorb everything that's truly costing us to run all of these athletic trips. And we charge out to the schools for the athletic trips. And so what I'm seeing is our charges are in excess of what we can fund through the activity fee and what we budgeted in the general fund.
so my disconnect is, we knew about that, the class is changing. So before this past budget, so we,
It's really, it's just very, very difficult to know where you're gonna exactly end up. The two hardest things to budget in the school district world are substitute cost and bus driver cost, to be honest with you. And because we have so many trips at the very end of the year with spring athletics and school activity trips, it's very hard when we're in March and we're in the budget process starting. It's very hard to know where we're going to end the year. And I'm just concerned going forward, I don't think we have enough budgeted to cover all the cost for these transportation for these trips. Even though we're going to monitor it really, really close, I mean, we have to release those buses when needed. And when they go for a weekend, sometimes they are gone. It may be an all-day Saturday event. It may be a leave Friday and come back Sunday morning if it's a tournament type event. And that's where the driver has to stay with the team or the group for the weekend.
And the funding source for this request is the excess of collections of car tax or whatever the case happens to be, but it's an excess that we received over the course of this past year that would.
For
otherwise-
this?
Yes,
Correct.
okay.
Correct. This request is coming based on where we think we'll end our final audited June 30th, final year-end numbers, total revenues over budget. And it's a combination of interest earnings, property tax revenue over budget, and state revenue a little bit over budget, but state revenue's getting very close now to budget. So it's primarily local property tax revenue over budget, interest income over budget. Those are our two main sources of revenue over budget. And then a little bit of expenditures under budget.
So these are the four subject areas that you would like to apply those dollars towards.
Correct. Correct.
So my question, on the list, the
Yes.
last one is the one that you're gonna see fluctuation, right? So there's not a lot of stability. The first three, though, shouldn't we be considering all three of those as part of the ongoing budget process?
Absolutely.
I mean, especially
These are and that's if you recall, the things that you approved in the first additional transfer that we did in June, these are all things that did not make the budget, did not make the general fund budget. Or we, like teacher recruitment, we didn't know at that point that we weren't going to receive those funds.
Well, and I also want to make note, the third one, we have a small committee, we've met with Teacher Forum to look how we can maybe combine some of these events to reduce the cost
Yes.
of each event. Retirement recognitions, Teacher of the Year, Sports Staff of the Year, those types of events.
And the outdoor air quality monitoring, this past year, we have paid out to date, I looked at this, about $255,000 to the Citadel. And we took a small portion out of impact fees, but we could only charge impact fees for the equipment install for Flint Hill Elementary. We took a small portion out of the bond for Flint Hill Middle, but primarily this funding came from the contingency fund, the cost for opening new schools this past year.
Right. And so now it's an ongoing cost.
And so now it's an ongoing cost.
And so it needs to be in the ongoing budget.
It does need to be in the ongoing budget, depending on probably where we are this time next year with what we think we need. Because I believe when we started this contract, we said we would evaluate it annually to determine the extent of what we felt like we needed in services going forward.
So maybe I see it a little differently here. I feel like our ROI on Citadel has been very low, very low. Paid them a lot of money. They're not even using the stacks. There's nothing in the air right now. I don't see why we're going to pay them. I mean, when they start, I see the value. But until they do, they told us they were starting at the beginning of last year. Nothing, right? And the issues that we have this specifically for SilFab. It would be great if the county could help us on this. It would be great if SilFab would even help on this, but they don't. Until they're actually doing something, I don't see the need to pay for air quality right now. What I was going to say is the two major issues that we had didn't even alert Citadel because they weren't air quality issues.
Yeah, I guess the question is, do we have the ability with the contract to pause it until such time as we need to ramp it up?
And we can certainly ask if that's the board's desire. I know Mr. Burke is scheduling, he and I were working out our calendars. We're going to have a meeting with them, it's possibly next week or the week after, to kind of talk about this, because the proposed contract, I'll just share with you, the proposed contract that they came back with was close to, it was between $600,000 and $700,000. And we said, we can't fund that. And so we set up a meeting to discuss what we could fund out of that proposal. So this number that I came up with is based on what we paid this past year for the monitoring. And it's the quarterly, but it's also, this equipment is everyday monitoring now.
It's continuous,
It's
right?
continuous monitoring, and Citadel's looking at the data continuously and will let us know and alert us if they see these fluctuations that we need to be aware of.
Well, I think it's a combination of, to Joe's point, there should be nothing happening in the air at the moment, given
Right.
what they are and are not doing. But also, it'll be great for you guys in your conversation to talk about the overall value proposition, as well as expectations that we should be having of assistance or information or anything coming from Citadel.
And that's what Mr. Burke and I have sat down and said, we need to talk to them, and based on what you would like, as far as really, what do we need for the next 12 months?
Well, and what have we gotten for the last 12?
Right,
Y-
Right.
Correct, yes.
yes,
Point, right?
yeah. And we can share that concern as well, certainly.
Okay.
But I am, as you think about these things, I'm glad to answer any questions, or if you want any more data. But we would have this on the agenda at the next meeting for action.
so we can follow up with any questions between now and then.
Absolutely.
I will
Yes.
follow up because I have some
Okay.
concerns.
Okay.
Sure.
I will follow up.
Okay, that'd be great.
All right, anything
Thank you.
else for Ms. Lordo?
Okay, thank
All
you.
right, then you're off the hot seat, and we will ask Dr. Dixon to come join us.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. I bring to you tonight proposed revisions to Policy JFAB, admission of non-resident students. I am sharing with you the corresponding administrative rule for transparency purposes. I do understand that the board approves policy and not administrative rules. As you know, the General Assembly approved interdistrict transfers, and the South Carolina Department of Education released model guidelines last spring. I want to talk to you tonight about what that entails for our district, and just want to remind everybody that this law takes effect for the 2027-28 school year. I'm going to start with just some key guidelines for you to take note of. These guidelines for interdistrict transfers only apply to traditional public schools. They don't apply to charter authorizers or special schools like the Governor's School or the School for the Deaf and Blind. The South Carolina School Boards Association published a model policy. What you'll see written in our revisions aligns very closely to what's in that model policy. We are required to submit our policy once it's adopted to the Department of Education by August 26th. If we fail to meet the minimum standard, they can withhold funding. Interdistrict transfers are open to all South Carolina K-12 students, and it's not just for those students who choose to participate in the state's Education Scholarship Trust Fund program, also known as ESTF. And it is available only where there is capacity allowable, there is eligibility criteria, and there will be a transfer fee. I'm going to give you additional details around that as we go throughout the presentation. Before I get deeply into the process, I want to just be clear about what an interdistrict transfer is not. It's not a guarantee of a seat in our district because you are a student outside of our attendance zones. It's not a requirement for us to expand our ability to accommodate demand. It is not a requirement for us to hire additional staff or to alter our programs, and we are not required to provide transportation to those families. The guidelines require 8 key elements. You can see them there on the screen. We'll talk about those a little more as we go through the presentation. The revised draft of our policy that I've provided for you, along with the associated admin rule, include these requirements. I want to start with capacity standards. The guidelines talk specifically around 4 required capacity standards. So each district is required to have an annual capacity study to identify their capacity availability. You have to look at grade level capacity, class capacity, based on board policy, student-teacher ratios. And if you'll remember, we looked at that late spring in advance of our limited school lottery choice program. Specialized program capacity, and as I read the guidelines, that refers to things like magnet schools. If you had a Montessori school or a language immersion school and language inside your board policy that talked about those specialized programs. 90% is a key threshold. Anytime a school reaches at least 90% capacity at either the grade level, the class, or the specialized program, we no longer have to accept additional non-resident students. I do want to make you aware that in consultation with our legal counsel, I did add in our administrative rule 2 additional capacity constraint buffers. The guidelines say that those capacity measures must be objective. I find these 2 buffers to be objective. The student generation rates for potential residential or approved residential developments, and then looking at our annual enrollment growth buffer so that we ensure we always have seats for our resident students first. Now, the SCDE has a draft of, that you have, and we are awaiting their review, and they'll provide us with feedback. Hopefully, that makes it through their review. It's in our administrative rule. We are required to follow a particular timeline. We have to open the window for this no later than February the 1st of 2027. It must stay open for 90 days. We must issue the outcomes to parents or families within 30 days of the closing of the window, and then they must have a minimum of 14 days to accept the offer to attend our school district. I do want to bring your attention to two key places in the guidelines. I was an English teacher, so I read very carefully. And the wording says that districts may allow applicants to rank schools with available capacity, but we are not required to. Our recommendation in the administrative rule is that applicants outside of our district would not be allowed to rank schools, but rather would have the option of simply selecting schools that are listed with available capacity. The second piece of information is that districts do have the option of accepting late applications. We are recommending that we do not accept applications outside the window. Continued enrollment. Generally, as you read the rules, and I want you to pay close attention to that green highlight because we're going to come back to that, no application is required once a student is admitted therein. There are 3 exceptions. Those 3 exceptions include when there's no clear feeder pattern, so I want you to think we have middle schools that feed into 2 different high schools. We could require a reapplication. Where the next level school would have capacity constraints, so if a student was matriculating from an elementary school to a middle school that we anticipate would have capacity constraints, we could make the non-resident family reapply. Or where the parent wants their child in a different school. So you're accepted as a non-resident student, you attend a school, you determine that you'd like to try a different school, you need to reapply. Those are the 3 exceptions. There is a priority provision on reapplication. Existing non-resident students, so think our students who are here by property ownership and pay tuition, or are not non-resident students of employees, they would get priority over new non-resident applicants. I want to make this very clear. This is something we deal with in our department, Ms. Husted to be exact, quite often. There are specific rules around the South Carolina High School League and transferring for student athletes. We've included in our policy, as modeled by the South Carolina School Boards Association, that it is the parent's responsibility for reviewing the South Carolina High School League regulations to determine how those transfers might impact their student athletes. Now, certainly, we'll make ourselves available. Folks call our office all the time. We'll talk them through. They're also welcome to call the high school league. And we want parents to pay special attention to that because the penalties for that don't just affect individual students, but have the potential to affect teams as well as coaches and programs. There are lots of guidelines around the application itself and some of the logistics related to that. So we have to offer an online and a paper application. It has to be accessible on a mobile device. They have to receive details of the process. When we send a denial, we have to have a clear explanation. And we're going to talk about grounds for denial, I believe, in the next slide. The sending school has to release records to us so we can determine that eligibility, records like attendance and discipline and IEPs and 504s. And so that is a part of the state requirements. In terms of grounds for denial, students may be denied if there is a lack of capacity at the requested school. There is a level 3 disciplinary offense, which is outlined in our board policy, what constitutes level 3 conduct. You will also notice that it says suspension of more than 5 days. Now, I will tell you that the model guidelines do not delineate between in-school suspension or out-of-school suspension, and because of that, we intend to count all suspension as one of the 5 days, unless otherwise directed. You'll also see that unlawful absences play a big role in denial at the middle school and elementary level, 10 in the previous year. For a semester course at high school, it would be 5, and so forth. Now, I mentioned earlier that I wanted you to keep in mind the green language about re-enrollment, so long as a student is in good standing. Because of that, we have placed in our administrative rule not only grounds for denial, but also grounds for revocation. Because if you're not in good standing, meaning you're not in good standing with your discipline or you're not in good standing with your attendance, and we included 1/3 area, which is dishonesty in the application process. And I'll give you an example. If you live in North Carolina, just over the line, and you complete the interdistrict transfer process, you're ineligible because you're not a South Carolina K-12 student. If we identify that you have been dishonest in your application process, we want the right to revoke you from enrollment. So we've included that.
Can I ask about that one real quick?
Yes.
Because you said it before that one of the things is the sending school has to provide,
Yes,
so it would be
Records.
last year, so they would have had to have attended a South Carolina school last year in order for us to receive that. Is that-
should have, that's correct. Sometimes we do get received documentation that, we have to investigate.
But if they, I guess what I'm
Well,
asking.
they could move.
I'm trying to think of
See
the
what you're
best way
saying.
to say that.
They could move to, let's say they were in Charlotte and moved to Rock Hill, they could apply to attend
Yes,
Fort Mill
yes.
schools. Yeah.
Yes,
So they did not have to attend a South Carolina school last year, but they have to now be a South Carolina resident.
correct.
And we still, I mean, but the requirement to provide us all of that information is a South Carolina requirement, which could become a little more difficult from some other state.
That's correct. That's right. The requirements also outline that each district must have a wait list, and that students must be waitlisted if space becomes available during the academic year. We'll have to maintain the date and time stamp of all received applications to take a look at that. I just want to mention briefly here, we did not have a wait list with our limited school choice lottery this past term. Much of the reason for that is that we were on a very compressed summer timeline and needed to ensure that we had seats for our resident students, especially I think you'll hear from Superintendent Young that we did increase in students and we needed to ensure that. But we are working on a procedure for that. In our administrative rule, we've included that in all cases of non-resident student admission, parents must assume responsibility for transportation. One of the elements that is required to be in our policy is priorities of acceptance. So I think I talked about this earlier. Our priorities are outlined in that sequence you see on the screen inside the policy. We first would look at currently enrolled non-resident students. Second, our children of full-time non-resident district employees. And third, all other eligible applicants. A sibling priority provided where space is available. Very quickly, I mentioned earlier that there is a transfer fee. I think we talked about this slightly when it was mentioned during the limited school lottery conversation. That fee, per the guidelines, is not to exceed the previous school year's local per pupil tax revenue, which is a figure calculated by SCDE, but we are allowed to charge any additional fees that we would charge our resident students. So like athletic fees and all of those things that resident students pay. We're required to follow a certain schedule that the State Department of Education will produce in terms of when payments are due. We have to give information around overdue payments and what the penalties would be related to that. And in order to receive Education Scholarship Trust Fund dollars, we have to register as a district as an Education Scholarship Trust Fund provider. So once you approve this policy, our office will start working on that.
Are there provisions for penalties for non-payment?
Yes, we get to
Student being able to stay in the school if the parents are not making the payments?
Yes, we get to outline that, and certainly. There is language around application denial. Families can appeal the denial to the school board, and the South Carolina Department of Ed is supposed to create a standardized form for all districts to use for that. In your hearing of that denial, it would not be a retry of the application process, but rather a review of the written record. And you would be able to determine, based on the written record our office would provide, whether or not you would uphold the denial. If the family was still not satisfied, they would have the option to appeal to the State Board of Education. I think so long as we stay within our policy and administrative rule, we would be fine. Once we adopt the policy, we have to collect annually data on the number of students we accept, the number of students we deny, the number of students we waitlist, and the outcome of appeals, and turn that information in to the Department of Education. Similar to our limited school choice lottery, we have to advertise the window prominently on our website. We have to advertise our capacity numbers by school, by grade, very similar process. We have to provide written notification to parents of the outcome and have information around the transfer fee posted on the website as well. Those are all requirements in the state guideline. One additional consideration we want to bring to you is the guidelines allow for districts to set their own policy as it relates to salutatorian and valedictorian. Our current policy says that valedictorians and salutatorians have to attend our district the 2 semesters prior to their senior year. We are recommending and have included in our administrative rule that non-resident students who transfer into our school after the 9th grade be not eligible for salutatorian or valedictorian. And so if you did not spend all 4 of your years with us after 9th grade, you would not be eligible. So we would need to amend that language in policy IKCC to match what's in our administrative rule.
Would that,
That applies
Clarification
to
on that?
transfer students only. That wouldn't be the student that moves here from New York or
Correct.
Chicago. Or
That would be students who apply through the interdistrict transfer process. Yes. You got it? Here's our tentative timeline. So we will, in August, bring to you this policy again for second reading, make any revisions or adjustments. We will, we hope to launch the resident and non-resident employee registration first, following our priorities of acceptance, and have our capacity study ready to hopefully post that data sometime in December. Our plan is to launch limited school choice first, giving our resident families first opportunity, and then following that with the interdistrict transfer window, and you can see those tentative dates there on your screen. Just a summary of those requirements. Again, we don't have to expand capacity to meet demand. I can tell you from the limited school choice process, we do have demand outside of the state, and we do have demand outside of our district. We spoke with folks and we had lots of conversations with lots of families to explain that they were not a resident of our school district and therefore were not eligible for the limited school choice process. So I do expect high demand, especially at the high school level, high applicants, but again, it's based on capacity, and so we'll go.
is the capacity study that was done for this year's limited school choice for intra-district, the same calculation that would have been used if we were already into the inter-district?
It is not. There are elements of it that, there are additional elements that we would need for inter-district. For example, we have grade level and class capacity, but we have put in our administrative rule, we want to include student generation rates based on approved residential developments and the average growth buffer of students enrolled between the 10th and the 135th day.
And we didn't have that when we did it
No,
for the
we did
current
not.
ones. Okay.
The 14-day acceptance period, is that calendar days? Is that business days?
It
Did the
does,
state define that?
they did not. They did not.
I would think that would be calendar, being
days is
14.
Right.
Oh.
And I guess it's also going to be important to know the specific process by which one affirms or denies, right?
Yes, yes. One of the things we've talked about in terms of our next steps is obviously bringing this back to you for second reading with any updates or clarifications you might have, but then start working internally in our office to apply for the Education Scholarship Trust Fund provider status, working on our own internal procedures in terms of revocation, application, all of those things, planning for the capacity study, working to communicate all of the information that has to be publicized in advance of the window, and then finalizing our timeline and working with Dr. Wakes in the instruction department to adjust the language in the policy related to salutatorian and valedictorian. I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
I would just say kudos to you all for how would I phrase it? for delivering what you did in that short window. What, June, July? I think you all did a wonderful job in rolling out that limited piece.
We have an amazing team, and I'm so thankful for our office. Corey Husted and poor Jack Griffin was working before July 1. But they came over and worked really hard and were really helpful in that process. Thank you so much.
And this next year, like principals, administrative staff, they would know, because it looked like May, is that what I saw?
Yes.
They'll be able to build schedules and,
Yeah, this year with limited school choice, we met with the impacted principals. We kept an open communication loop with them, and it was really good for us to go through that. We learned a lot that we could use in this process.
yeah.
And so that was great.
But, you know, something you just said, schedules, because the high school schedules are made long before May, right?
Course demand, course, they make course requests. And so we'll have to handle that. My thought is, and I could be incorrect, that we'll have to handle that when we make that request for records. If we determine the applicant is eligible, we'll have to make a note of that and maybe handle it the way we would when a student enrolls mid-year and we look at their transcript and what courses would progressively come next based on their current schedule.
And it will give us information on the courses that are full, such as career clusters, electives,
Yeah.
which the same, if those courses are full,
Full.
they'll have to go to their next option.
And/or that could be a decision factor during those 2 weeks.
Yep.
Correct.
Yes, there's room at the school, you're able to come, however, you will not be able to take X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
Because those are full.
Yep.
I have a question about the 90% on specialized program
Mhm.
capacity. And I'm going to rewind it just a little bit to make sure I'm clear that capacity is not building capacity, but it's what we've defined like as our class size capacity
Program
and
capacity.
such, right?
Yes, so there are two
Right.
factors. There's our board policy that talks about student-teacher ratios.
Okay,
And then there are state regs that talk about particular programs and, like, think gifted and talented.
right.
You know, and so we would use those two factors to make the determination.
If we're hitting 90% of our board policy class size, then that's a full grade
Denial.
level.
Yep.
Okay, and is there a way for the student to indicate if they have needs that we would need to provide in receiving them? Is that part of this special, like, I'm just imagining a wave of people who have heard, oh, Fort Mill is really good at da-da-da-da-da, and here come a bunch of students that need support for those teachers and support for those students that then impacts us budget-wise.
Yes, so one of the things that we'll build into the application process is asking parents to indicate, similar to what we did with limited school choice. Does your child intend to participate in athletics? Did they participate in athletics in the previous year? Does your child have an IEP or a 504 or receive gifted and talented services? Did your child participate in advanced placement courses, dual enrollment? So we'll build that into our application process and then verify on the back end with schools with record requests.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, I mean, I didn't doubt you, but I wanted to make sure that we had built in a safety net for ourselves so we didn't all of a sudden have to provide something.
Absolutely, because the goal is, you know, we are not supposed to have to add any staffing to accommodate.
Correct, but if a student has needs and a teacher wants to meet that need,
Yeah,
then they need support.
yep.
I want to echo what Mr. Bodie said. I just can't commend you enough on how proactive this plan feels and the work that you guys have done. I do have a question about the salutatorian and valedictorian.
Okay,
So review that again with me. If I'm a brilliant child from, say, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I move to Fort Mill,
there.
how many semesters?
it says, our current policy says you have to be enrolled 2 semesters prior to your senior year.
So basically your junior year, you have to have come here for
Okay.
your junior year.
And that's going to stay.
Yes, that's gonna stay.
For this policy, we're treating these children differently.
Yes. Well,
What is the purpose of doing that?
the children who move from Pennsylvania would be resident students. They would be zoned for our district. I mean, perhaps that's something we can look at.
The concern that I have is, once they come here, they're our students, resident or non-resident. and they're products of the Fort Mill School District. And if they're passing with the same rigor and achieving with the same rigor, I don't know why that almost seems like we're diminishing a student achievement
Well, I think,
for a policy that's been put in place by the state.
just to go against you
Right.
a minute, but like, moving is not a choice, but this is a choice that they're making. And my experience as a parent in Fort Mill is that our 8th grade, 9th grade, and 10th grade high school classes are very rigorous. Maybe it would be, I'm not gonna say easier, but less demanding to receive a higher grade in another district. You might say, oh, I have a really high GPA, I can come over to Fort Mill and become the valedictorian.
But I would
Based
argue
on
that
that.
at least they're achieving that based on South Carolina standards,
True.
right? To me, I think
get
we're
it.
diminishing
Well-
an achievement of a student of our district.
What, wasn't that in the model policy that the state?
Yes.
I think it's to protect the entire state. And what I mean by that is kind of like Lippy said, I'm a student at Fort High School, and I can go to Mill High School in a whole different
They're
district,
valedictorian.
and I can see that, hey, I can be valedictorian there. That's I think that's still a full college scholarship in South Carolina. You get a full.
Right.
So I think they're trying to limit people from taking advantage
Gaining that.
I do believe
the
that
different.
that's the spirit of the guidelines.
Right.
I think Dr. Wakes wanted to add.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing that Superintendent Young said. I think it's probably going to be more for students that, I think it's to help districts prevent students from saying I could be the valedictorian if I transfer to this district and then vault up to number one.
Not so much coming in, but us going out.
Definitely something we can take a look
Yeah,
at.
certainly.
To me,
Yeah.
even
it's-
if that's the integrity of the policy, the students still have to achieve, right? And the law is the law, and we're following the law.
At a
And
minimum-
we seem to be penalizing students.
I think we're the exception here. I think we're the exception. I mean, because if you can come from another district and come here and I don't think there's anybody out there saying, hey, I'm the top of my class. Let me go to Fort Mill so I can be the valedictorian of that school, right? Like we have a really high standard. So I don't know if that piece of the spirit of the law would really be utilized here. So yeah, I mean, if you can come here for a couple years and really show that you can make it and you can be the best of the best,
I think what you're going to see is people wanting to come here to be challenged and to have very
let 'em-
good teachers.
let 'em be challenged.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that, but I
but
think it's
do
in the model
think-
policy to protect this.
And I do think that we have language, to your point, that already, you can't show up your senior year with a high GPA and become the valedictorian, right?
Yes.
You have to have proven that you
Yeah.
can rise during 2 years' worth of,
Right.
of Fort Mill School District
Yeah.
classes, so.
Yeah.
I don't know that it.
The rigors.
May
that
not be
needs to
necessary to have, may not be necessary to make that change, but certainly can take your thoughts
Even
into
in the state
consideration.
policy. I think we're penalizing children for adult decisions.
Yeah.
I do. I think it's terrible.
Well,
So,
but honestly, if you think in terms of rigor, it certainly is easier at a high school level to somewhat compare. Everybody that takes an AP course takes an AP exam, and that's a regulated across the way. But how long ago was it that we had discussions about kids going off to higher ed that your SAT, ACT, this university doesn't want it, that one does. There's not a nationwide, sadly, system for critiquing or spot checking levels and rigor. We just know what our kids produce and do, and we know the interventions that we have to put in place and help with students that come here generally far more exceed what we have to do than the ones that we've raised.
Well, to become salutatorian or valedictorian, you're going to have taken a bunch of AP classes
Yeah.
and/or dual enrollment classes to have the 6 point
The weighted-
classes weighting. So those are generally more standardized.
Where I see this, just from my previous experience at the Department of Education, is where you have, for example, people who are graduating with a class of 75 people. So, really not people coming into our district, but leaving and going somewhere else where there's a much smaller pool and the competition is not as stiff. There's not as many people to compete against. So, other questions?
Yeah.
Objection noted. So,
Other questions?
I'll jump in. This is more an intra-district question. So and maybe I just need clarification on this. Whenever you have siblings,
Mm-hmm,
if one goes to this, like, say you have two elementary kids,
mm-hmm.
one gets in that school, doesn't the other one automatically get a spot in that school too?
It's dependent on available capacity. So for example, we have much lower class student-teacher ratios at kindergarten than we do fifth grade. So if you have a fourth grader and they get in, your chances of getting your kindergartner in are less because the capacity is less at the kindergarten level because of the class ratio.
So would it then, what's the process after that? Does it just like come to a close? Like one can go there, the other one has to stay here? Or is it like, well, this other school, they do have capacity, or would that already be looked at?
Well, it would be based on the parent's application. So if the parent applied across 3 schools, you would look at all 3 schools. But if the parent applied to one school, it would end there.
Okay. So just because you have a sibling and you get in does not actually even if you're a resident, does not actually guarantee
Correct.
that you would get
Only
in.
if there's room.
Only if there's capacity. Okay.
And we just had an abundance of kindergartners this year. An abundance of kindergartners registered during the summer. So, and in the spring. So the seats were very limited at the K1, 2 level.
Yeah.
They were very limited. Other questions?
Great work, very impressive, and
Very.
I know there's still a lot to it to actually doing the calculations, so the hard work is not over yet. But
So good luck.
good start. Yeah.
Good luck. Thank you, thank you. I think I have the next item.
Oh, you're still there. Yeah.
Yep.
I was gonna say, there's a whole nother topic, but it's still.
Yeah, I hope this is rather quick, but if you remember last year, I brought you our policy on student absences and excuses. There was language from the General Assembly that authorized for districts to excuse up to 10 absences for career and student technology organization activities. That language now includes another piece of legislation that says participation in any interscholastic activity authorized by the district, regardless of whether the activity is sanctioned by the South Carolina High School League or any other governing body for athletics and intramural competitions. Students can have up to 10 excused absences for that. So think about our students who participate in,
Swim back.
yes,
Travel bond.
yep.
Right.
Say that
That was
again.
the first thing that came to my mind. Travel ball.
Yes, interscholastic competition. Now, they would still have to make up seat time. This doesn't excuse them from seat time. Regardless of whether that activity is sanctioned by the South Carolina High School League or any other governing body for athletics and intramural competitions.
So think about tennis players that are on the rise and are going to Florida to train with a
Yeah, we-
rock star coach. I
You
don't know.
actually see it more with like equestrian,
Yep,
Okay.
figure skating,
Yeah, we had a-
hockey.
Baton
Yeah.
twirl, I remember that one,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
right,
do
that
remember
are not,
Yeah.
they're really not high school sports, they're
Right.
outside.
Right.
so we simply added that second piece of language that's in the legislation. In your memo, I linked the legislation for your review to that policy, but I'll bring it back next time for second reading. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'm happy to research those.
So the basic premise, let's kind of just try to put my snark away. The basic premise is we want our students to excel and do and be better in the classroom so that South Carolina is better in the classroom, but we're lessening the amount of time that they're going to spend with instruction. Okay. Got it.
Well,
I-
we already excuse
Right.
a lot of kids missing a lot of time in the classroom for things that are school sponsored. And I think what this says is there are other things that we need to make considerations for as well.
It would be,
I think this helps school principals because I think there's a lot of interpretation
Sure.
that principals are put in a hard spot to try to make excuses for parents
Okay to
for
miss this
specific
one, not
activities.
that one.
And I think this helps school principals.
I was going to make that point. We are going to put an internal document in place. It would be specifically for dates that you are participating in competition. So if you tagged on a leisurely vacation on the end of the competition,
Right.
that would not,
Shooting.
that would not be excused. But you're right, we do run into that quite often.
And
And
documentation should be
documentation.
required.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Other questions?
All right. Thank you. And I believe that brings us to Mr.
Yay.
Young.
Well, I have a summer report before the first day report. so
Okay.
I hope that's okay.
All right, let's talk about
Wow, I
both.
don't
So,
Wait, you work over the summer?
we do.
Right? Are
We
you
do.
sure?
We work all summer, except vacation days. when we
Yeah.
take 'em. But we did have a short but productive summer. Space camp, we had space camp at Orchard Park Elementary School, served over, or close to 250 students and had 40 staff members. They had 14 days of camp that ran from June 8th to June 30th with nearly 100 hours of additional instruction, so that was awesome. And Amber, I'm sure, will do a presentation at some point, as she normally does. We also had an onboarding for all of our new administrators to the district. We have 2 new principals, Brad Johnson, who's sitting back there, and we have Angela Struve,
Also back there. Oh,
who has been with us, but is now the principal. Dr. Dixon and I attended the transportation in-service at Nation Ford High School and spoke to all our drivers. Our technology department was working hard on our new AI protocols and guidelines, which our teachers have now been trained, and they are currently providing training for our students. Middle school and high school, we had Jumpstart in service for all of our induction teachers, and we welcome them. And then on July 23rd, we actually had our admin retreat, which was awesome. We had a fabulous speaker, Hayward John, and he talked to all of our administrators about being committed to the call, believing in your impact, and being better together. He called it Fort Milling. We're going to be Fort Milling. And he was very inspirational, motivational. I think all of our administrators just raved about him, so that was awesome. We also had a student panel that answered questions about school-related topics in front of our administrators. Hayward facilitated that, and I will tell you, it was very eye-opening, and I think it gave our administrators a glimpse of kind of what a student is feeling in today's world by being in school. So a lot of cell phone talk there. Many of our district office staff made the tour around Fort Mill last week when teachers returned. We visited all 22 schools as well as Oak Grove, and we spoke to each staff. We spoke to them about being excellent in the 4 Cs and in every moment, as well as the impact that they have on our students every day. And then we also got preliminary test scores. We're not allowed to tell you what they are because they are embargoed, but we are very happy. I will tell you that. Monday was our first day of school. Flint Hill Middle opened with not too many hiccups. Had a little power outage for about 20 minutes. So that was fun. And all of our other schools experienced some of the usual issues on the first day, but students not knowing how to get home or a couple late buses. But overall, it was a wonderful first and second day. And I will say that almost every principal I talked to said it was about as smooth of a first day as we could have had. So that's really awesome.
Generators did kick on at
Yes,
Flint
they
Hill
did.
Middle, by the
Yep.
way, so they
kick
did
off.
have.
You were right. So they work. The generators work. That's good. Calendar of events. We obviously, first week of school, we have a Board of Trustees meeting on the 18th. August 28th, 29th is the School Board Law Conference in Greenville. And August 28th is also a 2-hour early release. Our elementary will release at 12, middle school at 1:10, and high school at 1:40. Enrollment update, we have our first day enrollment was, according to Power School, was 18,346, which is up from 17,942 on the first day last year. I will tell you, we had 18,066 students in seats today. That is up about 100 students, well, not exactly 100 students, it's about, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, 8 students from yesterday, which was 17,936. Am I doing the math right? 70 students. No, 130 students.
30, yeah,
130 students,
from yesterday to today.
which is about a 1.5 today. If the Power School numbers and the actual people who showed up, it's about a 1.5% absentee rate. You can guess, we probably have some kids that are sick, or maybe some kids that decided to extend their vacation for a few days.
Not Labor Day yet.
And we will also have students continue to enroll as we get closer to Labor Day. And we'll have some students that don't show up. So we'll get you those numbers at the next meeting, and they'll probably be a little more accurate. So our teacher-student ratios look pretty good across the board. There's some areas we have to watch, but I think we're good as we are good as of now. And I think that's it.
Can I add a couple things to the
Yep,
calendar?
Absolutely.
Just a reminder that the tax-free weekend is
yeah,
this weekend.
This weekend.
So if there is anything parents have not purchased yet for school supplies, it's a good opportunity for it. And I think, if my notes are correct, I think we have Parent University planned for the 25th.
We do. It's a good
And we want to definitely highlight that because it's
Yeah.
a great opportunity for parents to learn all kinds of things. And I don't know that we have had as great of attendance as I think we would if we really promoted it, so. And then I did happen to notice that all 3 high schools are at home on August 21st. That's going to be a very exciting
Busy night.
game of football
Yep,
at all the high schools, so.
absolutely. Yes, Parent University is at Catawba Ridge at 5:30 on the 25th. Sorry.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, I hit it. One other thing I will add, because we talked about it last night, the enrollment was about 400 kids, but it was very interesting that it was roughly 200 each at the middle and the high school level, and pretty much flat at the elementary.
Yeah. Yep.
So definitely you can see where the growth is coming in. We are in need of a second executive session to discuss personnel, receipt of legal advice regarding a pending claim, legal issues, and contractual matters. So,
Motion to go into executive session.
Second.
we're in executive session. Thanks all. We'll be back in a bit.
Thanks, y'all, for a great first week.
Gotta
Motion to return to public session?
Second?
We are back in open session. While in executive session, we discussed personnel, received legal advice regarding a pending claim, discussed personnel recommendations, legal issues, and contractual matters. I believe we have one action to take.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the administration for 37 replacement certified staff and 2 new.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for 37 replacement and 2 new certified staff. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nope.
That motion carries. And with that, we are
Motion to
adjourned.
adjourn.